So I'll start with you real quick, just about recent progress. How do you feel things are going, and any updates you'd like to mention?
Sure. I think last time we talked about having several plans that were in the works that we felt were finally starting to bear fruit. And one of those is the 200 welfare workers went through 3 weeks of training so they would be able to help claimants with both PUA and UI issues, and many of them have both. So they just finished their first week of actually working on those claims, and they got through just about 5,000 of them. So that is, those are the kinds of numbers we were hoping to see, and we gave them a refresher training, kind of go over some specific questions that came up in their first week. And we think they'll be able to continue to make that kind of good progress in, mostly those are PUA folks who kind of have both issues that need to be resolved. So we're very pleased with that. And the other progress we've made as we switched over, Alorica's last day running the call center was on Saturday. And we've switched it over to a DETR managed call center that started this morning. And so far, so good. And the difference there is the folks who are answering the phones can also handle both PUA and UI questions and progress for claimants. And we think that that's really going to help resolve sort of these complicated issues that people are having.
And on the topic of the call center, what's the point of having it in-house? Just to let people know to get rid of Alorica and move it back to DETR.
Yeah, the plan always was that it would come back in-house because the PUA program, which Alorica was hired to answer questions for, expires in December. So we always were going to have to bring it back. The reason we moved that up earlier was that we were finding a large number of folks in the PUA system really needed to be able to have someone to look at their claim in both PUA and regular UI. Because if you had regular UI wages anytime for the past year and a half, we'd need to be able to see that to get you in the proper place and get your claims filed in the proper system. So just because of the growing number of claims that had both issues, we felt it was important to bring it back and be able to answer both sets of questions.
And Barbara, is there anything you wanted to mention on that progress that she just elaborated on?
We spent a lot of time adding staff to be able to address the backlog and the cases that continue to come in. And so I feel like we've made tremendous progress with the addition of these 200 welfare eligibility workers and 75 new call center staff. So I think you'll begin to see, as we're already seeing, more of the backlog being addressed, and just as importantly, no creation of a backlog for those that are filing now.
So those 200 welfare workers, correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to be actually calling people, right?
Well, let me clarify. They're going to be processing cases. There are many cases that they don't need to call the claimant. They can look at their file and what they've already submitted and approve their claim for payment, or determine that they should be in UI instead of PUA, send them a determination telling them that so they can establish their UI claim. They absolutely may reach out to call the person too, but they may just not need to, and will again just be resolving the claim.
Perfect.
But we have had a few people not respond when they have called. So there are some calls being made.
Okay. Is there any anything people should know about those people calling, phone number, area codes, or anything like that?
I'm pretty sure it's going to be coming from a general state phone number. So if they are getting an unknown call from a 684 number or a 486 number in Las Vegas, It could potentially be one of either our staff or the welfare staff calling them to verify some information, get additional information, or just sort of give them an update on their claim. So they should definitely answer that if they possibly can. And we know that the folks who are making these calls out are calling at least 3 times. So if you couldn't get to your phone, they'll be calling you back probably in the same shift. So you should definitely try and answer that call and get those issues resolved if possible.
Okay, and so so a lot of the chatters having a tough time getting through on the phones. What's a suggestion for people with that? Is it still just keep trying, or what is your suggestion?
Well, hopefully today, with the new team taking over the PUA call center, those concerns will decrease. We always know that Monday's the worst day to call, right? In almost any system, right? DMV, the doctors, you name it. They usually say, you know, Wednesday, Thursday are better days than Monday and Tuesday. But we're hoping less complaints come as a result of the takeover of the PUA call center. And again, since those, if someone files for PUA and they should be in the UI system, and that one worker is able to help them, then that's one less call going over to the UI call center. So again, we're hoping the addition of personnel hopes and stabilizes both systems.
Perfect. All right. And I don't know if Elisa or Barbara, are you guys able to give me any sort of, I know you said 5,000 last week, which is good. Are we able to compare what we've been doing recently to what we've been doing a couple months ago, just to give people a sort of idea?
Well, the welfare workers are completely new to the system, and they're working in both. They're working in both systems. So really, there aren't any comparable numbers because the two call centers were working separately. So I don't really have any comparable numbers at this point to share. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look and see what kind of reporting we had before that. I do know that the call volume has come down quite a bit in the PUA call center. And I think it's because we have been able to do notification to a lot of folks that they should be in the UI system. So that moved those calls over to the regular UI call center. So I could see what we have in terms of call volume that I could share with you.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't have anything off the top of my head, but they're now quite different systems.
Yeah, Elisa, I don't know if we could highlight for Joe some of the notice of ineligibility determinations that will be going out.
Yes, we are working with the vendor GSOL to set up notifications. As you know, fraud has been an issue for every state in the country in the PUA system. And we have been able to do a few mass notifications for folks that we haven't been able to, that had the UI wages. And now the next sort of mass notification we want to do is for claims where we haven't been able to verify identity. So that should be coming in the next few weeks, where we'll be able to send out a mass notification saying we've determined that you're ineligible because we can't verify your identity, allowing folks an option to appeal or possibly go through ID Me to say, no, I'm a real person that got stuck in this. So it should sort of speed most of those cases of real folks to resolution, and also allow us not to have to keep reworking claims that we think are not valid claims, so that we can sort of more quickly move to the people who are eligible. So folks should be looking for that as well in case they somehow get caught up in that, and then they can quickly either verify their identity or appeal their case to us so it can get processed.
And Barbara, is there anything you want to mention on that? I didn't know if you...
Yeah, there'll be about 9,000 of those going out shortly. That's people that did not follow through with ID Me, and we believe almost all of those are fraudulent claims. So it's significant progress to be able to send those ineligibility determinations to unclog the system. And then, of course, at the same time, we've identified the remainder of the claims that we think are valid. And those have been distributed either through PUA adjudicators, the welfare workers, and other staff to get those processed as soon as possible. So we feel like we're reaching, we're seeing light at the end of the PUA tunnel. And I think you're going to continue to see that over the next couple weeks.
Will doing this notification, will that alleviate work they're trying to figure out, verify someone's identity? Is that just kind of creating more of a backlog because they're trying to figure this identity out? And by sending that notification out, it might clear that up to get others through, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
It clogs up the system every time someone stops to look at someone who is part of a fraud ring. It's time not spent on a Nevadan that needs help. And we got to connect the Nevadans with their benefits. So weeding out the fraudsters, focusing on those that are eligible until everything is cleared out. That's the goal.
On that topic of fraud, I mean, we've been covering this obviously for a while now, and you've been seeing people filing from out of state, out of country. Have you noticed anything different lately? Is there anything you guys can comment on that, or do you think that it's sort of inconsistent with what we were seeing before?
I think, we've put several measures into place where we're able to better sort of determine whether a case is a legitimate claimant or a fraudulent claim. So we've asked folks in the PUA system, for example, to upload their documents, and then based on sort of how they respond to that request, that helps us sort of sort things out. And so there are several claims that are fairly active that are moving forward to be evaluated and continue to be processed, and then several others that are likely to be determined ineligible once we get that notification to go out. So I think that we're seeing, and I haven't been following other states very closely, but I think that if once people see that there are fraud protection measures in place, then they move on to other states to see how they'll fare there. And certainly we've seen sort of spikes in cases, initial claims in other states that suggest that people are just continuing to see where they can best perpetrate these frauds. So hopefully, and our case initial claims are coming down in both systems. So I think that also is reflective of a little bit that the economy is picking up in some places here, but also that we're not seeing as many fraudulent claims being filed.
Perfect. Okay. I know, Barbara, last time, it was the last interview, maybe the one before that, we had talked about overpayment concerns, and there were some things that were going to be addressed when it comes to overpayments. I knew that PUA wasn't around obviously before. Is there any changes with that, or is everything still the same? I think you'd mentioned that you guys are going to be meeting about something regarding overpayments.
Yeah, we hope to reach some resolution on that this week. We needed to kind of re-look at the different programs, right? Because of course PUA wasn't around before. So we're examining that and hope to have some additional guidance on that out this week.
And when you say on that, is there any specific part of overpayments that you're talking about?
Well, what we want to try to do is have a good balance, right? If someone can repay an overpayment that accrued in the past that they hadn't taken care of before in order to establish eligibility, we'd like that to happen if we can. But we have different systems. We have different eligibility for the different systems. We have different computer systems. So we're ironing that out so we can give better guidance to the claimants.
Perfect. All right. Another big thing, obviously, and I'm sure you guys have gotten bombarded with questions regarding the $300 weekly payments from the FEMA, that whole thing. Can we give any insight onto where we're at with that?
Yes. So we said when we were approved, which is about 3 weeks ago, that it would take 4 to 6 weeks, and we're definitely looking at being able to process these payments within the 4 to 6 week window. So the next 3 weeks here, we're in testing right now to make sure that it goes smoothly, and we'd rather take a few more days and test it and make sure it rolls out smoothly than try and rush it and then have create a bunch of new problems. So I think we're in the next 3 weeks, people should expect to see this. They don't need to do anything additional to get the benefit. If you're in PUA and you were paid those weeks in August, everybody that was eligible in PUA will also be eligible for lost wages. Remember, in the regular UI system, you have to have made a minimum of $100 weekly benefit amount to qualify for the lost wages amount. So not everybody who got paid unemployment in August, the first 3 weeks of August, will qualify for lost wages, unfortunately. And it's a fixed amount of money. So we are trying to get more guidance from the Department of Labor in terms of the extra weeks, what happens, because people also have continued to file claims. And so there's more people that are going to qualify than we originally projected would be getting the benefit. So we don't know how many weeks we're going to be able to pay. Our goal is to pay as many people as many weeks as possible. But in the next 3 weeks, that program functionality should be up and running.
And then remember before you said, as soon as that money comes through, you might be able to apply for another 3 weeks of it, roughly. Is that still something that's happening, or what should people expect with that? Was it just one time the first 3 weeks, or was it potentially more?
We did apply for the second 3 weeks. And again, it's because it comes from a different pot of money. It's FEMA money. And so once it hits a certain threshold at FEMA, the funding stops. So we are doing an analysis right now to see how far the money that we get will go. So we don't want to commit to folks whether they'll get any additional weeks until we have some certainty from and clarification from the Department of Labor. The first 3 weeks we are solid, and as many weeks after that as we can possibly cover. And we're just looking for clarification from the Department of Labor and FEMA on that.
So 3 to 4, so it could be as soon as probably before the end of this month, you'd guess, right?
Yeah, that is, yes. That was our commitment. That's still our commitment, before the end of this month.
Okay. Appeals. I know appeals is a lot of people are talking about that as well. A lot of people waiting for appeals. Where are we at with that? And should people be getting notifications when it comes to their appeals, their appeal, really?
The appeals capacity, the first part of the module exists so people can file their appeal. What we still are waiting on with the vendor is the ability to schedule the appeals. So that piece we're still waiting on. We hope to have those going by the end of this month for sure. We are in the process of training appeals reps so that they are conversant and ready to go once those appeals start getting scheduled. We have discussed, are there ways to speed it up, but really, even if we went back to the old school sort of manual way we did this, you have to compile all the documents. So you really need the system to put the appeal together to fairly get a consideration of all of a person's documentation. So the best way is just to get it up and running in terms of the scheduling, but we do think that will be available by the end of the month as well.
Okay. Barbara, is there anything you wanted to weigh in on the appeals?
No, we're anxious to get them going.
Okay, and just because I've talked to several people who have filed an appeal and they don't know what they're specifically waiting for, when you say notification, will that come through an email or a letter? How does that work, and what should people expect after, I guess they get a date, right?
Right. I'm pretty sure they get something in the mail that tells them the date of their hearing. They can. I haven't seen the final notification, so I'm speaking from sort of what I know about how it works. So I may have to double check on this, but they will get a notice of when the hearing is scheduled. If they need to reschedule, they can contact us and do that. They're given their due process rights. So what the process looks like. They can bring somebody with them if they'd like, and just kind of the question that's going to be decided in appeal. For a lot of folks, before they even get to this point, and this is happening right now, we do have a team reviewing all the appeal requests, and we're finding that about 25 to 30% of them truly have a decision that is appealable. And they're, in a lot of cases, they're able to resolve just to make a correction or update a decision that was made and get them moved through the process without having to wait for an appeal. So that's actually for the folks that are waiting for that capability to come online. A lot of them will just get an issue resolved or something corrected in their forms so that their case can move forward, which would be a much better outcome for them.
Yeah, I'm guessing that would alleviate a bigger backlog of appeals come time for hearings. Obviously, has that been going on since this pandemic started? Is that something that's already been going on?
Yes, it's been happening, recently, where the workers are going through, and some, for example, will say, my identity is legitimate. I uploaded the documents. Please look, right? And they'll look and they'll be there. And so their claim will get approved. Some have been as simple as that. And in the end, that saves so much time, right? People aren't waiting longer than necessary. But some of them are, this just isn't fair. Why was the law created this way? Well, that's not a legitimate appeal. That's something you can bring to your congressional delegation, right? For example, there's a lot of people complaining, rightly so, that they're being forced to go into UI when PUA is the majority of their income. And that is a legitimate issue. It is wrong. In my opinion, it's a flaw in the law, right? But that is the law as it exists right now. And so there's nothing that DETR can do about that. But I spend a lot of time talking to claimants who are confused and upset about that portion of the law. As a matter of fact, I spoke to Catherine Cortez Masto's staff about it just last week. It's affected a lot of folks in the entertainment industry, especially.
If people have questions regarding not only appeals but anything else, what's the top thing for you guys to say? Is it to call? Is there an email outlet they could do? I mean, what's the best way for people to get through?
I would say at this point, there's a couple of things. One, there are handbooks online. There's guidance online that they could educate themselves. I realize it's a complicated system, so that's not an easy task, but there are a lot of frequently asked questions on the website. That would be possibly the first place to go to get an understanding. At this point, I believe that the call centers probably are the fastest way to, get an update if you really want to talk to a person about where you are. And then just we are working as, focusing our resources on being able to process the largest number of claims and I wish we could get to the point, and we will soon get to the point where we can say, okay, we're into sort of regular operating. It takes about 3 weeks to process your claim, and we're probably closer to, looking at 6 or 7 weeks for folks, depending on what the issue is and which line they're in. But that's our goal, is always to get down to sort of a regular processing amount of time for people. And then it just, you have to wait for your claim to go through the system and have a person look at it, or whatever needs to be done. So long answer to a question where the short answer is probably the call center is the best place to get an answer.
And with the additional staff, I'm guessing that might change now, right?
Yes.
That's right. And the more claims that are processed, the less questions people have. So we feel like we'll be making progress on all fronts soon.
We're almost done here, but the backlog, do you feel like you're making a pretty good dent in that backlog? I know when both of you took your roles, there was a substantial backlog. I don't know the number, but thousands. How do you feel it's going?
Well, in the UI system, we've processed over 15,000 in the backlog, and higher and higher every week as the staff is trained. And, same with PUA, as we process the remaining claims, send out the denials on the rest. I think you're going to continue to see faster and faster resolution.
Perfect. All right. So anything else either of you would like to say before we wrap this up here about any future progress or anything that's in the works? Any changes?
Congress is apparently talking about another package of some kind. So our hope is that it looks like one of our existing packages that we can just add to. We will do whatever it takes to get whatever is passed implemented if it comes our way. It just, every new program adds a bunch of new wrinkles. So I'm hoping it's an existing program that gets extended.
I can imagine.
And I hope with one change, I hope that they don't force PUA claimants to go to the UI system when their UI wages are an insignificant part of their income. I think we could make that change in our state pretty quickly, and it would give a lot of relief to a lot of people.
Yes, if we could just process them in one system rather than two, that would be good. I think the other thing I would say that folks should know is coming is that every quarter we are required to go back and look at, your last quarter's earnings, and we just passed another quarter. So there may be some more people that are moved from one system to the other based on their, what happened, what they were doing in the workforce a year and a half ago, because that's how far back we go. So that is something we can't change, is we have to reevaluate everyone's wages every quarter. So that's coming too.
Perfect. All right, let me stop.